Welcome back to my channel. What happens when the purveyor of violence comes face to face with WWE's most explosive young star? And what if the very first move Jon Moxley makes after his shocking return to WWE is to strike directly at the heart of Paul Heyman's powerful Vision faction? That exact question was answered in dramatic fashion when Moxley confronted Bron Breakker in a backstage encounter so intense and unpredictable that it instantly sent shockwaves through the entire WWE Universe. This was not just a random meeting, not just a passing stare or a few heated words exchanged in the hallway. This was a declaration of war, a warning shot fired with precision and purpose. Jon Moxley, a man whose very name is synonymous with chaos, pain, and unfiltered violence, did not come back to WWE to slowly ease his way into the spotlight. He returned to make an immediate impact, and he chose the most volatile, dangerous, and promising young force in the Vision faction as his first target. As Survivor Series approached, and tension was already at a boiling point, Moxley's sudden appearance added a dangerous new layer to an already combustible situation. The WWE Universe was still reeling from the shock of his return, trying to process the implications of seeing him back inside a WWE ring, when he struck again, this time not with fists or weapons, but with words laced with menace and intent. The backstage area crackled with electricity as Bron Breakker was in the middle of an interview, confidently discussing the upcoming War Games match and his role within Heyman's dominant faction. Breakker, full of intensity and youthful arrogance, spoke like a man who believed the future belonged entirely to him. Then, out of the shadows, stepped Jon Moxley, that unmistakable wild look in his eyes instantly recognizable to longtime fans. The atmosphere changed in a heartbeat. The confidence in the room shifted, the tension thickened, and everyone watching could feel that something volatile was about to unfold. Moxley slowly approached Breakker, circling him with the calculated movements of a predator, sizing up its prey. With a cold, deliberate tone, he acknowledged Breakker as the new monster on the scene, the rising wrecking ball of WWE, the young powerhouse everyone had their eyes on. Breakker did not flinch. He stood tall, shoulders squared, refusing to show even a hint of intimidation. Moxley continued, his words sharp and deliberate, explaining that he had been watching Breakker closely, studying his raw power, his explosive athleticism, and the dangerous confidence that radiated from him every time he stepped into the ring. But then came the cutting edge of Moxley's message. He told Breakker that despite all that strength and energy, he had never experienced true violence, never been trapped in a war where survival was the only rule and mercy did not exist. Breakker, fueled by pride and youth, fired back without hesitation, calling Moxley an old man and making it clear that fear had no place in his heart. The insult hung in the air for a second, but Moxley did not erupt in anger. Instead, his response was calm, chilling, and far more terrifying because of it. He warned Breakker that fear was exactly what he should be feeling, because inside the War Games cage that night, he was not coming to wrestle for points, pride, or applause. He was coming to hurt people, and Breakker had just placed himself at the very top of that list. Those words alone shifted the entire narrative heading into Survivor Series. This was no longer just about teams, strategies, or faction dominance. This had become deeply personal. It was the ultimate collision between two generations and two completely different philosophies of violence. On one side stood Jon Moxley, a battle-hardened veteran who had bled in rings across the world, who had survived every kind of match imaginable, from street fights to death-defying encounters, a man who learned to thrive in chaos and use pain as a weapon. On the other side stood Bron Breakker, the unstoppable young powerhouse representing the future of WWE, built on explosive speed, freakish strength, and the confidence of someone who has dominated nearly everyone placed in his path. What makes this confrontation so fascinating is not just the contrast in age or experience, but the contrast in how each man approaches destruction. Breakker relies on overwhelming force, speed, and raw athletic dominance. His style is direct, brutal, and unapologetically powerful. Moxley, however, operates on a completely different frequency. He is the embodiment of controlled chaos, a master of psychological warfare who doesn't just aim to defeat his opponent physically, but to break their spirit, to pull them into the deep end where fear, pain, and desperation take over. By singling out Breakker as soon as he returned, Moxley demonstrated not just aggression, but strategic brilliance. He went after the most emotionally volatile member of Heyman's Vision faction, the one whose fiery temperament and untested arrogance could be exploited in the madness of war games. In doing so, Moxley didn't just threaten one man, he sent a message to the entire faction and to Paul Heyman himself. He was declaring that no matter how carefully Heyman had constructed his vision for the future, no matter how dominant his chosen warriors appeared, there was still a storm coming that they were not prepared for. The timing of the confrontation was no accident. With Survivor Series only hours away, emotions were already running high, nerves were already stretched thin, and every competitor was mentally preparing for battle. Moxley chose that exact moment to inject doubt, fear, and uncertainty directly into Breakker's mind. Even if Breakker refused to show it on the surface, the seeds of doubt had been planted. The idea that he was about to step into a kind of war he had never experienced before, against a man who thrived in that environment, was now impossible to ignore. For the WWE Universe, this single backstage moment instantly became one of the most talked-about segments of the entire night. Fans could feel that they were witnessing the beginning of something much bigger than a one-off confrontation. This was the opening chapter of a rivalry built on blood, pride, and the collision of past and future. Moxley's return was no longer just a nostalgic moment for longtime fans or a surprise appearance to boost ratings. It had immediately transformed into a storyline filled with danger and unpredictability. Every word exchanged between these two men carried weight. Every glance, every step closer, every subtle change in expression told a story of a coming storm. Paul Heyman's Vision faction, so confident in their dominance and their control over WWE's future, suddenly found themselves facing a threat they could not manipulate or intimidate with words alone. Jon Moxley is not a man who fears reputations, power structures, or political influence. He fears nothing, and that is exactly what makes him so dangerous. By targeting Breakker, he effectively challenged the foundation of Heyman's vision, showing that the future is not as secure as they believe. As the night moved forward and the anticipation for war games intensified, this confrontation lingered in the minds of fans and superstars alike. Every time Breakker appeared on camera afterward, viewers watched closely for any sign that Moxley's words had gotten under his skin. Every shot of the Vision faction carried an undercurrent of tension, knowing that the Purveyor of Violence was somewhere in the